And then again, we'll record this. Any questions you might have, if we don't get a chance to answer it in this session, you're always welcome to contact Kristen and I. And while I'm the trainer for this session, I'm always going to be available for general questions. And Kristen is actually going to be a fantastic resource for questions about just the program with Wells Fargo and some of the things that you guys are going to do with our policy team as well as with other grantees. I think there's a kickoff kind of do more webinar coming up as well for you. So this session is going to be about PolicyMap, and you might have seen a little bit of PolicyMap, maybe as a quick kind of presentation. And so what she wanted me to do is show you really the bells and whistles. Sometimes I do a very detailed session about some of the very specific features, but Kristen wanted me to show everyone everything. Some of the things that some grantees use PolicyMap now, today, and some of the things that you're actually going to start using when you do work with the policy team as you plan your target areas and such. So hopefully this will give you some ideas of how to use PolicyMap. I have a horrible process of talking too much sometimes, so if you do have any questions, and I'll pause between some of our parts here, but if you do have any questions, my name is Phil Vu, and I'll be your trainer for the day. And so what we actually try to do today in this session with the grantees is that there's a lot of really cool features in PolicyMap, and what we're going to try to show you today is some of the features that the grantees that we work with before and even currently like to use right away or are using right away. And then there's also features that as you work with the policy team and Kristen, you're going to actually use some of those features, which is things like drawing boundaries and uploading data. So we're going to talk a little bit about uploading data, and we're going to talk about drawing really cool boundaries in the system. Then I'm really going to give you a basic session of PolicyMap and some of the cool things you can do. Generally what we do is at the very end, I'll follow with an email that has my information, Kristen's information, but the video link that we're going to talk about, which I'm going to edit a lot of the starting part out, and a lot of the links that we're going to talk about today. So hopefully it's enough. Hopefully it gives you excited and you'll start making some maps by the time we're done. Cool. One of the things that we've definitely learned from grantees is that they wanted to add a bit of their own data. So one of the really unique features in PolicyMap is the ability for you to upload a spreadsheet of data. And you probably saw these really cool pictures and you're like, what's going on? So the data loader is a very simple data loader, and sometimes I call it a dummy data loader, in that all it wants to do is upload and plot a data set of addresses. So you have a spreadsheet of addresses. What the data loader will do is it'll basically geocode those addresses and show those addresses on the map as little icons. It's a very simple tool, meaning that it also doesn't look at the data that's there in your file. So the upload a spreadsheet of data, the spreadsheet itself, all we require are these 4 fields, which is the address, city, state, and zip. You can have as much data as you want alongside the address, city, state, and zip, or you can have no data at all and just have the address, city, state, and zip. It doesn't matter. All we need are those 4 fields. The benefit of adding these other fields then is it just adds more data available to each address. The data loader allows you to actually upload as much data as you want to. It's pretty much unlimited. The only limit that we have, though, is per file, and it's just because of resources. So each file can have up to 5,000 addresses, and actually 5,001 rows with a header, and then 45 columns of data. And then each field themselves can even have 250 characters. So it's just a wealth of data that you can upload anytime you process. Once you build your file, you just want to save it as a CSV or comma separated value, and then you go through the data loading process. And it's actually a pretty easy process because it does walk you through each steps. We're going to upload a spreadsheet of points. We're going to give it a name. How you want to share it is based on really where this data should be shared with other users. By default, I always say share with myself only, mainly because it allows you to either clean up the data, make sure everything's correct, or if you don't want to share this data with anybody else, myself only means that only your account can access this data set, so no one else actually has access to it. So for privacy rules and such, you can just have a singular data set in your account. But if you do want to share it, there's actually some really unique functionality to it. The general public means that anyone that comes to PolicyMap So they don't even have a subscription or not. They can actually see this data. So we do give you the ability to turn off and on fields. We can call it permissioning. That way, if you don't want to show all the fields in your file that you uploaded, you can turn off those fields. And then the selected individuals is probably the one you might use more often, because this allows you to put your data set that you create here into another person's account, and only that person or people will see that data set. The benefit of sharing a data set is that, or even just putting it on someone else's account, is that you are actually the author of the data, and you actually control the data itself. So as you add more addresses, as you make edits or anything to it, it automatically updates to the person. And then the icons are the current icons in PolicyMap. So the benefit is you can make multiple data sets, use different icons, use different colors, use different sizes for those data sets, and each one can mean a different thing. So if you have a survey data for population and maybe a different survey data for housing, you can upload those two separate data sets, and then you can overlay those at the same time on the map, showing two different types of data, but with different icons or colors. And then you search for the file is step 5, and that's really it. This is how many fields you need to actually put together when it comes to building a data set. So the really hard part is making that file, because you have to determine what data you want to use to upload. When you click on to import spreadsheets, you'll only see this page once. It's kind of a one-time page, because it just wants to identify those 4 fields that I talked about, which is the address, city, state, and zip. If for whatever reason these 4 fields aren't listed up here as what's going to be used to geocode, maybe address is spelled differently, or zip code, or it's called a province instead of a state, we do that all the time, you can select down here and say, oh gosh, this should have been state, or this should have been address and such, and it will use that the geocode. And then when you click next, this is pretty much the last page. This page here it recreates my spreadsheet, but in this table. So these are all my headers in my spreadsheet, and then it adds a few extra columns to it, giving you some just additional information. So the first column is actually just telling you which ones were successfully found in the geocoder versus ones that failed, so the reds are the faileds. If they did find itself in the geocoder, our system will add the latitude, longitude, so it's a coordinates for where that address exists. You can click onto any of these fields at any time, allowing you to edit text. You can sort by the columns up top. And then for any addresses that are for whatever reason the address failed, it could be a zip code, it could be a range. There's a lot of different varieties that could cause an address to fail the geocode. In mine, I just happen to not have an address. And then what this will do is it'll actually geocode on the fly within this little window. But when you click Save and Close, it'll save the data set, and then it'll put the points on the map. And hopefully, that's how easy it should take to go from a spreadsheet of addresses to being able to visualize those points in the map, and then even clicking onto a point and getting all the data that you put from inside that data set.
What is the source of something like the loan types? What's the source of that, for example?
So this particular data set is actually is TRS. So what we're trying to show is that you can use any data you want in your system to upload. So this,
I got you.
This is just a loan file from TRS. That's all. Yeah. So you're not locked into these fields that have to be called TRF program. It can be actually whatever you want to call that section or that data in the file that you would upload.
I was just wondering if we would get loan data. Are we uploading the data? Is the data already in the database and we're just tapping into it?
No, you would use the data loader to upload data, your own data in here.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives you a kind of a general idea of how the data loader works. The biggest part, again, is the file itself. All you need is the address, city, state, and zip, and then all these other fields things like loan data, things like years and dollar amounts. That's up to you. It's you probably have that data somewhere. You maybe have different types of data sets that you want to be able to visualize a little bit. Maybe it's not just loans, it's just be people information. You can use the data loader to upload that and then be able to visualize it on the maps.
If you have a CSV file of any kind of data set, let's just say an organization has a membership list and they just want to organize that membership list, do you have a, does it go to a sandbox where you can then edit your data before it goes into the file, or does it go straight in the file?
Well, you actually edit the spreadsheet. So it'll, once you edit the spreadsheet, whatever is on that spreadsheet, it'll go into the data loader.
Okay, but when you go to the data loader, there's not an interim step like a sandbox before it goes into the data loader?
No, yeah, the way it works is it looks exactly as it looks just at the spreadsheet itself. I mean, once you upload things, you can make edits to it if you wanted to and fix it. All you need to do is go into the data set and then, let me go back to, and click on edit points, and this will reopen that table, allowing you to make any other edits that you wanted to.
Are there any other security controls that you have on the data set once it's in your uploader?
What other security controls are you looking for?
I'm not looking for it. I just want to know whether if you gave out 10 licenses, any one of us with a license can come in and upload a data set, and it would identify us through the license. If someone hopped on my computer and I didn't have a security code for that particular activity, would there be an issue?
Yes, because they're jumping on your computer. But yeah, I mean the data sets that you upload are locked within your account, so no one else can see this data unless you choose them to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does this data all have to be entered individually, or are there ways that we can upload from, say, like a city program or something that would have at least those 4 data, those 4 columns in them? Can we upload data from one of those into this policy map?
Yeah. Again, you would just pull that data from that source as the spreadsheet, though. So the only way to upload data into PolicyMap is via the spreadsheet, or you can do it at a point at a time.
So you have to do the work of putting the spreadsheet together, right?
You can just copy the spreadsheet. Copy the
Right, but you got to enter the data into the spreadsheet. Okay, cool.
Well, if it already exists, Roberta, at another source or by another entity, you can just
Yeah, I know. As long as
it.
it's a spreadsheet, I get that. Yeah.
So is this Excel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So this is basically a mapping program. We put the upload the data, and it spits out a map. Is that?
So that's one thing you can do. Yep. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you, which is the ability to upload data.
Okay.
There's
There are other functionalities. Okay.
Yeah. Let's go over there then.
Okay.
Phil, how many different types of spreadsheets can you upload? I mean, of course, you say spreadsheet, immediately you think about Excel, or at least I do.
As in,
you know, I mean, there are
Access?
other.
Will it take access files?
that's an Access database. You can, within an Access, you should be able to just copy and paste or export that into an Excel spreadsheet as well.
Okay, so what the answer is that
You want Excel?
If you were using Google Sheets or you're using Apple's spreadsheet or Excel, any of those would work.
Yeah, the only thing you need to do is save it as a CSV. So any database tool, any
to save it
spreadsheet,
as a what?
a CSV,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how
Comma-
the data comes. Okay.
yeah, the comma separated value.
Mm-hmm.
Not transfer language.
My common language is Excel.
You're good. If you know how to use
Okay.
Excel,
Yeah, you can use any data, any kind of spreadsheet application. And the only thing you need to do is just export it. I use Excel as an example for us, but as long as you export the file into a CSV, comma separated value file, it'll use that to upload.
Okay.
All right, so besides being able to upload data then, there's actually data that's already in the tool. So let's kind of go through that, and then we'll see what else you can do on here. So the map is interactive. You can see that I was able to do a couple things like scrolling around and panning and such, but the map itself is fully interactive, meaning you can pan to different parts of the neighborhoods, you can zoom in and out, you can use the zoom bar on the right here. If you're on a PC, you can use the scroll wheel as well to zoom in and out. So it's probably very familiar things when it comes to using an online map or a mapping tool. The location bar on the top works like most mapping tools, like a Google Maps. You can type in an address. It'll zoom to the address and drop a little pin in there and even a little bubble. And again, you have kind of all the same abilities to pan to different parts of the neighborhoods and still zoom in and out. So the location bar, though, is a bit of an open text field, meaning that if you don't have an address and you maybe just have a geography like a city or a zip code or a neighborhood and such, you can type that in there as well, and then that will, again, instead of zooming to a point, it'll zoom to the area and even draw that area for what you searched for. And again, still the same abilities to pan to different parts of neighborhoods, and then, of course, zooming in and out.
Can you put in 77004?
Sure. So without any data loaded, you can actually click onto the map, which is one of the very unique features with the tool itself. What this does is that it'll draw the smallest geography that's in our universe. So in this case, it's block groups for us. And then it actually shows you all the different levels of geography that it sits in, so the nesting of geographies. So this point that I clicked onto the map here sits within this block group, which sits within the track, the zip code, the school district, and metro, and so forth. So it's a simple tool in that if you have an address or you want to look at a place and just click onto it, it'll at least give you a lot of these kind of geography information that you normally would have to come to the census or other sources to get to. It also means that you can search for some of these boundaries, and some of them are what we call a predefined geography. And all it means is that if you wanted to search for, let's say, a track or something more complicated like a school district or something, if you click onto the location button, this will give you some other geographies to search for. So census tracts, block groups, legislative districts. So the way these work is with congressional, these are the federal ones, and then state districts are your state legislative districts. So these work by choosing the state that you're in. The upper is the Senate. The lower is the House or Assembly. And then this will basically zoom there and draw their respective districts.
So we can locate the districts that are in 04 using this tool, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing is this bar on the very top, what it's trying to do is give you the ability to zoom the map to the place that you're going to start working in. But you can actually, where are we at? What was that zip code again?
77004.
Perfect. So you can also overlay some of the boundaries that you can search for up here. We call them map boundaries, and they're on the bottom of the map down here. And so these are the ones you can search for in the bar on top, so things like congressional districts, legislative districts, metros, and such. So if you want to show what your legislative districts look like in the city, you can overlay that boundary. And then you can even overlay multiple boundaries, sometimes giving a little bit of a messy map. So always be careful how much you add on. You can make these complicated maps sometimes. And then just one last thing that I cover when it comes to boundaries is that by default, our system will overlay two types of default layers, and that's road and land use. So if you wanted to make a much more simple map, you can.
Bill, this is Curtis. If the boundaries that you want to add are not in your database, but they are boundaries, let's say for like a utility district or something like that, can we add those boundaries separately, or would they have to be added in your drop-down?
We can add them separately. It's a good segue into then what we call a custom region. Oh, cool. So you're actually going to use this feature because I believe as you work with our policy team, they're going to want you to define some of the target areas that you're working in. So what we built for users, we call it a custom region in PolicyMap, and there's actually 3 different ways to make a custom region, and they're available on the bottom here. So the Create button down here will open up this menu, and the menu will give you these 3 functions. The first feature is the Draw feature. The Draw really is that. It means that you're actually drawing the lines yourself. The unique feature of the Draw custom region is that it doesn't care about any of the underlying boundaries, just like you mentioned, in like utilities and such. It doesn't care about the underlying geographies that are in PolicyMap. You can cross city lines, zip codes, tracks, and anything else when you make a drawn custom region. So when you do go through this, I hope you take a moment, just read that little instruction blurb. All it's trying to tell you is that when you click OK again, your mouse turns into a pointer, and you're simply just dropping the vertices of a target area. You can zoom in to get down to the street level if you wanted to make as many of these little points as you want. I always make really complicated points. The goal is that if you wanted to close, or when you are ready to close this drawn custom region, you want to click onto a point or the first point, and it will close in that drawn custom region. And give it a quick name.
Phil,
so I mentioned.
Is that a standard polygon tool, so it'll give me areas and all that?
No, it doesn't do any measurements for geographies, unfortunately. All it will do is just draw the boundaries. There are some abilities for you to download data for the underlying area, but it doesn't do any kind of GIS type stuff.
Okay, so it's not a GIS. It's just graphics.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, it has a little bit of intelligence when it comes to downloading data, but it doesn't do any kind of spatial calculations to it.
If we wanted to export that file into a spatial file, is that difficult?
That is not available, unfortunately. Yeah, you're looking for it as a shapefile or so?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, the custom regions is not exportable. So I mean, we'll kind of tie back a little bit with PolicyMap and really why we built the tool. Then, a lot of us are GIS people. We do some really cool kind of spatial analysis, but we wanted to build a tool that hopefully anybody can jump on and make maps and add data and use boundaries. So hopefully, as you use PolicyMap, it's hopefully you can build a lot of what you want to access in the tool, upload data, and make maps and such.
You're making it a graphical relational database rather than a GIS tool.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're shortening the learning process of GIS. So instead of having to go out and get data and geographies and projections, we're putting it all in one tool.
Great. This is a resident-driven process.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
the drawn custom region is neat because, as I mentioned, it doesn't care about any of the underlying boundaries. It will care, as I said, when you want to make a report for this area. It'll use a very simple 50% rule and say, of all the underlying geographies, if you want to use block groups or tracks or whatever other geography, it's going to say at least 50% of the tracks of a track's area needs to be within this geography, and then we're going to use all of those tracks to aggregate the total number for. So that's the benefit of a drawn custom region, is that it's a kind of a freehand draw. If you, though, do need a geography that is defined by places, a custom region that's defined by geographies, we do give you the ability to what we call assemble a custom region, and this takes into account the boundaries that are in PolicyMap. So when you click OK again, The map actually initially defaults to the current zoom level, the current layer they were at, which is census tracts. But up here in the top right, you can use this to use any of the boundaries that are in PolicyMap. So you can be very granular and use block groups. You can be a little more general. So maybe you want to make kind of your district level target area. You can group counties together. You can group metros together. You can even group congressional districts together. And the system, in the end, will make this a really cool boundary, and you can actually aggregate data for. So to assemble a custom region, you're just clicking onto the map. And it'll just highlight those boundaries. If you make a mistake, you can deselect parts. And then the kind of last really unique feature of the assemble custom region is that you can make a non-contiguous target area, allowing you to say, well, maybe you have a few tracks across the city or across the state from each other. You can make these boundaries, and in the end, when you are ready to aggregate data, it'll summarize the data for these two geographies or these disconnected geographies. So we have an assembled custom region you can sort of see, and then a drawn custom region. The last one is the radius one. That's a bit of self-explanatory. It will make just a circle, basically, based on distance, though. That's the only time that we use distance in PolicyMap is the radius. It'll use, based on the size of the radius, it'll draw a circle around that point. When you do make a custom region, though, it'll be saved into this menu to the left, which is My Custom Region. And so these are all the ones that you create. There's a little bit of functionality within this little menu. Besides being able to just access, you can add them and remove them from the map. If you add a custom region, the map will zoom and center your custom region. So I mentioned that custom regions have a little bit of intelligence, besides just being able to visualize and show the boundaries that you're working in. So the intelligence come within these icons. So the little blue icon here, that's actually just going to remove the boundary from the map. But the red icon will give you a little bit of customization. So you can do some basic things like actually filling in the colors or changing the colors. You can take this custom region to other parts of PolicyMap. And the tables page in here allows you to take this boundary, go to tables, and use and download data for any data sets in our PolicyMap just for this target area. And the reports allows you to make a quick report for this area. So this is where I'm going to take us real quick. And so reports in PolicyMap are pre-built. You don't have the ability to customize them at this time. But what we try to do is package together each report with very similar data sets kind of built around that concept of the report. A community profile is probably the one you're going to use most in PolicyMap. I'll show you the Wells Fargo one as well and how that's a little bit different. But the community profile is the one that you can use for any geography in PolicyMap, and it's really just a demographic report. But there are other variables, other types of reports you can make. Things like home sales, rental, HMDA is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act.
Mm-hmm.
With
so you do have mortgage, you have the capability in here for us to extract mortgage data. The HMDA data, is that accurate?
Yeah, you can make a HMDA report based on geography. So you can even overlay HMDA data.
Okay, and the home sale report, what is the source of that data?
Home sale is coming from a company called Boxwood Means, who gets it from First American Core Logic. And so these are quarterly updates as well as annual updates, and we're only about a quarter behind, or sometimes 2 quarters depending on the source. But they take individual home sales and they aggregate that number into a geography, generally the smallest geography we use then, which is block groups, and then they show other levels of aggregation. So you can make a home sale report of maybe your little target area, but then it'll show you the aggregation up to the county and the metro and such as well. So in the report, it's pretty simple. These are the other ways to make the area for the report, but I'm going to use our custom regions just so you can see what a report looks like. So here's my area that I drew.
So do your reports allow for trend analysis?
They show different years, but they won't show it as a trend chart. But you'll see what it does here then.
Okay.
Yeah. So some of the fields show multiple years, but it doesn't show the trend. You can actually show trends in the tables page, but the reports will, at the very least, show you multiple years, so that you can see that at least.
How granular?
Depending on the size of the geography. So if you draw a really big custom region, it's going to use large geographies. But if you draw a smaller custom region, it'll use block groups or tracks.
No, I meant granular in terms of time scale.
It's based on the availability of the source. So with the demographic report, it really is the census. We go to 2000 as our base, and then it will be the 2010 biennial, and then the most recent ACS.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the top part of the report just talks about the area that our custom region kind of fits in, things like congressional members, senatorial districts that it touches. And then we get into the data itself. So this shows you what the population was in 2000, what it was in the 2010 census, and then what the ACS estimates the population is in 2014. And then from there, you have a little bit of calculation. So my custom region's growth is actually pretty close to the county and the state growth, which is kind of neat. There's racial characteristics for the area, age distribution, large concentration of working age in here. Then it has a breakout of household incomes. So while 16% of the households make $25,000 or less, it's pretty diverse in its middle income households. There's a little bit of immigration information. Those are foreign-born. There's family types, total number of households. And then we actually leave the demographic part of the report, and then we get into kind of the community profile part, talking about things like the housing stock, the type of homes that people live in. So while 21% of the households live in attached or detached homes, over 50% live in apartments in this area.
Is this census data?
This is still the ACS, yep.
ACS, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I would say most of our demographic data is going to be from ACS. We don't use any projection companies or third-party companies.
Okay.
And then down here, the vacancy data, this is actually one of the subscription data sets. This is from a company called Velasas List. They actually are a part mailing company. They work with the USPS, actually, to build a pretty complete list of vacancies. So what they do is they work with the USPS to determine an address vacant by undeliverable mail after 90 days. And so as the USPS reports that every day, they send that to Velasas. They work with Velasas as a mailing center, and it's updated quarterly. So it's actually a pretty cool data set because it breaks out things like residential vacancy as well as business, but it's only deliverable. Think of that as a site deliverable vacancy. There's employment information from BLS. We update this every month, and so it's updated in the report every month. And then a bit of jobs data from still the ACS, and then even a little bit of crime data for the area that geography fits in. Crime, unfortunately, isn't granular. It's only available at generally metro and county level data sets because we get it from the FBI Uniform Crime Report. But at the very least, you can draw a custom region. If it's small, it'll tell you at least what the crime in the neighborhood or the city that it's in.
They do aggregate it by beats. I'm sitting here doing that now.
Oh, you probably have it for the city, right?
Uh-huh. By beat, but by beat. So for our study area, there is a beat.
Well, that is
aggregated, but it's available.
So the neat thing is you could probably even use the data loader to upload that crime data.
Exactly.
You know, plot all those points.
Yeah,
because I know
the city of Houston has some pretty good crime data sets that are easily accessible. So you can download them. We can download them from the web and then upload them.
Yeah, I've got it downloaded on my computer as we speak. I'm working on it now.
Oh, great. So that's good.
And yeah, because we've gone with them a little bit just to look at localized crime data, and they produce lat longs for those incidents too, which is really good.
Yeah.
So the reports is kind of one way to access all this data in PolicyMap. It's probably a much more traditional way that you've seen data in the tool. What we wanted to do in PolicyMap, though, is give you the ability to visualize some of that data, and that's where we're going to go next. All right, so the last thing that I covered before we can get to PolicyMap is this first tab, this My Data tab, is going to be custom to your login. So I talked about the data loader, having the ability to access just the data you access or you upload. So this first tab, when you're on the Maps page, will always show those data sets that you've uploaded. But it will also show any data sets that we've uploaded to your account. So I'm in kind of a super user account, so I see all the ones that we processed for the different Wells Fargo groups. But this is where your data, as you work with Kristen and the policy team, it'll exist in here. The other data set that's available in here will also be available through Wells Fargo and Kristen. I apologize, I have a lot. I just have to get to it. And that will be the Wells Fargo report. And let me just go back real quick to Philadelphia just so I can show you what the Wells Fargo report looks like. So the Wells Fargo report is based on you working with the policy team to determine the area that you want to, I guess you're going to work in and such. Once you determine that area, they're going to work with you to determine what they call comparative markets. And then when they have all those geographies created, it'll be loaded into PolicyMap for you to access and create these reports. And so these reports are similar to that community profile report that I just showed you, but the difference is it's much prettier, and also it has a lot more data. And then we wanted to, because it's so much data, we broke it up into 4 different reports. So if you want to see a basic demographic report, well, this is an example of one of the grantees, other grantees. So this is Rutgers target area, and these are the areas that they created that were comparative markets. And what they wanted to do is show their area and how it looks against those other markets based on the categories of reports. So this is demographics.
So Phil, we can see that across the board, or is that restricted?
This will be, yeah. We'll turn all these regions on for you, so you can see it as well. But for now, the only ones we have, I think, loaded are in the Philadelphia, Camden area, so you can see these reports. But yeah, eventually yours will be in here, and then when you go to Houston, your report will be there. So this is the housing report, and again, each one is based on that category of data, and this is what they're going to work with you to build out. All right, so those are kind of the custom data sets that we have here. Let's go back and talk about the data set that's already loaded in PolicyMap and what you can do with it. And they're really just based on these categories in the very top here. The email that I'm going to send to you at the end of our session will give you a link to a summary page. The summary is, what it does is actually summarizes all these categories here. And it's going to give you a general idea what's in these categories without having to go into them individually, because we have a lot of data that has submenus that really go further and further and further. So without getting lost in the data, it's a good place to start. There are 2 types of data that are in PolicyMap, though, and it's very simple. It's just based on these columns that you see in these tabs here. Columns 1 and 2 are what we call a data layer, and all that is just it's the color of the data. Let me just remove. It's data that's aggregated to a geography, so it's laid on top. It's summarized to these different geographies, and there's a legend for it to kind of read, and I'll talk about how you can customize a data layer. So just understand that a layer of data is just that aggregate data, and the data layers are in columns 1 and 2. Columns 3 and 4 are data points, and all that means is that it is an icon that represents an address as a point for that particular data set. So this is bank branches that sit on top of home loans at the same time. Data points, data layers both have a legend, and the legend gives you a little bit of customization, and I'll come back to some of the customization in a second. But I generally just want to point out those 2 types of data that we have, and it's really, really simple based on the columns that you're in. So the data that is in PolicyMap, what we tried our best to do is put it into a category that hopefully makes sense that you might use. And so I'll just highlight some of them, some of the ones you might use today. And I think you do have interest in the lending column, which is a kind of a cool one for us. But under demographics, it's basic things that we're familiar with. It's population, it's racial characteristics, ethnicity, age groups. There's also some other variables that we pulled from the ACS, veterans, language spoken at home, so there's even Spanish-speaking languages that you can look at. There's also information on households and family types. With income and spending, these are just, again, just general variables related to, in the first part is income, so it's per capita, it's family. Household income is probably the most commonly used indicator when it comes to looking at income. So because of that, the census actually breaks out some really unique subcategories, things like head of households, tenure, specific income brackets, age groups for those income brackets as well. There's poverty data by people and families in poverty. The tax return data is the IRS. It's from the IRS. It's actually all of our 1040s that we complete every year. The IRS publishes that data, they aggregate it to the zip code level, and then with that there is just a wide variety of ways that that data could be broken apart, and that's kind of what we did with this. So you can look at income as total income, but also unemployment compensation, IRA contributions, deductions, ETIC claims. So if you're looking at areas that have a large concentration of people that are making earned income tax credit claims, you can see that as well. Some other variables still in the income and spending. There's affordability calculations. If you do work in a variety of different federal programs, you're probably looking for low mod calculations as well. So we do have AMI from HUD, but we also have the low mod calculations for AMI that we do based on census data. Let me jump to lending, just so you can see some of the different variables in here. So this is the HMDA data that's in here, so the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. We do break out HMDA into hopefully lots of really unique categories. We actually work with the Federal Reserve banks to make these calculations in particular because they needed to see loan originations in very specific types of breakouts, including things like ethnicity and race, and even borrowers. There's a little bit of CRA data, there's CRA eligibility, there's even unbanked data, again, still from the ACS. Let me do one, maybe two more, and if you want me to talk about another one, I'm happy to jump in as well. But I'll talk about economy real quick, just because there's a lot of unique information that you might use when it comes to looking at jobs and even workforce in the neighborhoods that you work in. So it does start out with just the basic jobs indicators. It uses the NAICS code to look at the individual sectors that jobs are coming from. So what this means is that you can overlay a map and see the concentration of workers that work in construction in that particular area. It also uses the subcategories of the NAICS code, so it even gets further into the granularity of job-specific types. There's unemployment numbers from BLS, as well as labor force. And then this one is actually a really unique one within the PolicyMap tool. It's the LEHD data, or the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamic. That is a very unique data set that the census worked with the quarterly employer census of employment to report on the workforce itself. So it looks at the workforce, and then it breaks out the people that are actually working into sectors, but also into some really unique demographics, allowing you to find where workers are that make less than $15,000 or that have a bachelor's degree or more, so you can look at highly educated workforce, or a very specific demographics of workforce, under 30, over 50, races and such. So LEHD is a really, really great way to look at workforce, because not only are you looking at just the people that are working, but the demographics of those people. And then the last one is just the federal guidelines. These are a variety of different federal programs that either we participate in as a CDFI and as a nonprofit. And then, of course, these are other programs that the federal agencies asked us to put into the tool. itself. So I do apologize for our kind of short, late start. We're going to run into 3 o'clock. Are you guys okay with going a little bit over, or let me know if anybody has a hard stop?
We got to
Go ahead.
Cool.
Can you hear me? Go ahead.
Okay, good, good. I mean, we probably have maybe 10 or 15 minutes more, so I wanted to make sure no one has a hard stop.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, he means it. Hey, let me ask you a question. Where do y'all get that information from? Like in a area, how you know who graduated from college?
That's all in the census. That's the best part about the census is that they produce some really great data sets. And, you know, the census that we all used to do every 10 years some people would have the long form, which had just a ridiculous amount of questions that you had to answer.
Okay,
and then...
So it's based upon the response from the census?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't ever respond.
So the census, because of that situation where the long form made people really deterred from actually wanting to finish the form, the census, if you remember this last 2010, it was, well, I think 10 questions altogether, and that's all they wanted to know was just a very simple count of people. So they produced an annual update called the American Community Survey, and that is a survey of households each year, and they actually use large samples with small samples every over 5 years to produce an annual update. So the ACS is actually a really unique project from the census that allows us to get more variables or more questions being asked, but also updating census numbers that you would only see every 10 years. That's the neat part of the ACS. So we do have other sources besides the census. We use federal programs. You saw we have HMDA. We also use programs with crime data from the FBI crime report, education from the National Center for Educational Statistics. So I would say the census probably is a big chunk of data in PolicyMap, but hopefully we have some diversity in data that you can use other sources.
Bill, I've just got a question back on your earlier loan data.
Mm-hmm.
Your data sets. Do you have information on the predatory lenders like the payday loans and the car title loan business?
Oh, I can tell you where they are.
So it actually used to be called high cost here. It used to be called subprime loans. What this does is that it looks at the loans, not the lenders themselves. It'll give you a map that says this area has a high concentration of high cost, or at that time subprime loans. So you can use high cost as a measurement for that.
Got it. So it develops a typology of lending, but those lenders are reflected in the database.
The lenders themselves, let me just pull up the borrower loans by income. No, the lenders. This is actually an origination of loans for people, so it doesn't talk about the lenders themselves.
Okay, but I'm saying that the people, the range of loans that you're looking at include those categories of loans. It's not just credit cards and banks, but it's also payday lenders. Those payday lenders and the other loans report into that database is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But only for mortgages, not for other kinds of loans, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You
Yeah,
got
because people go borrow for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Payday loans are not.
That's not a mortgage.
Mm-mm.
Well, no, that's what I'm
these
trying to get at.
He don't know nothing about no payday loans.
So
Yeah,
I guess in terms of your database, are we talking of, is it just home mortgages, or are they their personal loans? Do you have a category of personal? Okay.
No, this is just home mortgage. I apologize for mishearing that.
Oh, that's that's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't think people are required to report loans, and I don't think banks are required to report those type of. That would be a kind of a neat one. Adding unbanked is actually a really big question. This is from the ACS again, and again, this is talking about how many people are unbanked, how many people, and then they break it up by race and ethnicity. So this is a really neat one as well if you want to just look at personal loans and people that are in areas that are unbanked or underbanked as well.
That's a good one.
Okay, so let's show you one little thing about the data layers, and I'll show you a little bit of customization when you add a data layer. The first thing is the legend, as I mentioned, is going to give you all the details of being able to read the map. One thing is the geography. The shade by is going to tell you what geographies are being shown in the map. In this case, it's census tracts. And then the value of the ranges based on the colors that are here. So in this example then, anything in the dark purple is a census tract that has a median household income, which is the title up here in the very top, of $75,000 or more. And then the lighter colors are places that have income of $34,000 or less. You can actually click onto the map at any time, holy smokes, and get the actual value for the geography that you're currently zoomed at. So in this case, it's tracts. And then remember how we talked about nested geographies before, just showing you just the places that a point might sit in? Well, in this case, the nested geography also gives you the value for those places that there's aggregation for. So in this example, this tract has a median household income of $168,000. It sits within a ZICTA, which is similar to a zip code of 71,000. The city is 45. The county is 50, or the county is 53, and so forth as you go higher and higher. So the ability to click anywhere will give you those individual numbers for those individual geographies that you're looking at. The legend, though, also gives you the ability to customize the data a little bit that you're displaying on the map. You can change the year that's here. So if you want to go back in time in 2000, the map will change, and oh, that's much different in Houston, huh? So the income was much different in Houston in the middle here versus what it was in 2014. So we have places that are 19,000, 25,000, and such in 2000.
That was one of them, the features that I'm particularly interested in. You're, again, going back to trend analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have set maps that are trends across multiple data sets, like income by race or household ownership by age, that kind of thing, over time?
Yes, yeah. So that's the one thing with the data in PolicyMap. Just when you think of income in PolicyMap, in this example, then know that because it's such a popular data set, it does show it by race. So if you want to show what the income was for black head of households, then it'll show you that just that income, median income for that household. And so all households is everybody, but it does break it out to individual head of households. And then once you have it on the map, the legend will allow you to toggle the things like different years, but also what you're looking for then in this case is actually the variable change, because the variable is actually changing how the data is being shown in the map. So by default, if you look at income, we want to show you the default variable of dollars because that really makes more sense. But the percent change allows you to see that calculation that our system will do for you, which is the income between 2000 and 2014. And so the legend changes from dollar amounts to percentages, and the percentages will represent that change.
Got it. So the percentage of delta change from the bounded years.
That's correct. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, so now when you click onto the map, instead of showing you that the income was 89,000, when we clicked onto dollars, it's actually showing you that this place increased 230%. Wow, you probably know that area really well, and why? It's amazing.
Got it.
And then, of course, some places have maybe a decrease in income. Holy smokes. So the variable is actually changing how the data is shown. One of the other really unique features is the ranges themselves. These are created as quantiles. So this is a 5-quantile range. And all that means is that we take the total number of geographies in that data layer, in this case tracts, and just evenly divides those tracts into fifths. It doesn't care about the actual values for each tract. It just wants to make that kind of separation. And that's how these ranges are created. But we wanted to give users the ability to also make your own cut points. And so when you click onto this, it'll release the fields, allowing you to make your own values in here. So now if you want to show me places that have a decrease of maybe 20%, has a negative increase, maybe an increase of 50, and then 100%.
What about it? What do you do if you want the cut point to be the median for the city? You want to look at above and below. How do you do
Then
that?
you just do 2 colors.
What do you put in, though, to tell it that you want to do that?
Oh, well then you would go back to dollars, and when you click onto the map, you'll see that the city income is 45,000.
Okay. And so then that's where you would put the cut point.
That's right.
I got you.
And so now all these tracks are over the median household income of the city versus these areas that are below it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so the legend is very unique as in because it does give you this ability to make your own cut points. And as you can see, you can do 2 colors. You can also control these ranges. So maybe your goal is to try to identify households with maybe lower income. You can enter these numbers.
Yeah, you might want to look at 50% of the median and below, or 60 or whatever. That's a good feature.
So this allows you to quickly cut this ranges up, and now you can identify places that have extremely low income versus high income, and just like you stated, you can also edit those ranges. Now, if you do work in the concept of low mod calculations, you can add that low mod layer. So this is what we already created, that calculation based on the metro that it's in. So what it's saying is that anything in the dark purple is 150% of its median household income to the area median income of the county.
You've done that work for us already.
Yeah, so in this case, you could change this to 2 ranges, and then maybe your goal is to try to find 80%. And so now you have anything in a dark purple is over 80% of AMI, and anything in the lighter color below.
See that? You need to put a railroad track on to it.
Phil, just another question about your service through PolicyMap to us while we're in this contract. I'm assuming as the steering committee that we're forming does its work, there are going to be questions that come up. And can we rely on you guys to guide us through an analysis guide us through an analysis of the data as we develop those questions?
Yes, you actually, as a steering group, you get 3 pretty important people to work with you. You actually get our policy team, who does their own. They're actually kind of a data shop. They build data. They produce really great analogies and methodologies. And what they're going to do with your data is they're going to work with you to kind of build some of these comparative areas, but also load data and understand that. And then Kristen is your point of contact for not only loading your data, but also trying to help you make sense of how it would look on PolicyMap.
Is your tool programmed in Python?
It's JavaScript.
Okay, it's JavaScript. Okay.
The database is a little bit different. So the front end of PolicyMap is JavaScript, but they use a different language for database side.
Okay.
Spatial SQL, if you want to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did I hear you make reference earlier to land use data? Or did I hope that I heard you make reference?
We just have the layer of land use. This is actually just talking about parks and things like schools and such. So nothing specific. Okay. We do have a zoning layer. You might be able to ask Kristen and beg her and see if she can add it on there.
We don't need that.
It's not relevant.
Okay.
We won't be needing that.
All right. So let me show you one last feature. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. But do you include other natural and infrastructure questions like flooding, flood zones, various districts for the core, that kind of thing?
So we actually do have the flood zone data that we update every year with FEMA. The only problem is it's not on the interface tool. It is complex. I'll send you a separate. It actually has to send a separate server because it breaks PolicyMap because flood zones are very complex. They don't follow just tracks or roads or anything. They are each individual point that draws a flood zone is a point in PolicyMap. So it breaks our site. But I'll send you the link where the flood zones are at. You can make your own maps.
Because your tool is not GIS, so it's not topological. It doesn't have any land features. It's just
That's correct.
map. Okay. Data layer.
Curtis, we have mapped that for the greater area. We have a map of the floodplain that we can share.
So again, what I'm looking, with the type of analysis I'm looking for our consultant to be able to do, we're in the process of finalizing an RFP, and I wanted to understand the limits of your tool and the support service so that we could properly scope what the skills our consultant needs to bring to the table to supplement what we think we might need.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a good conversation with Kristen, because she knows the tool and she'll probably better understand what is available within the steering group and from the Wells Fargo program.
And then the other thing that we want to be able to get out of this is after the year of planning, we want to make sure that the organizations that are consortium members or the steering committee, however we end up defining all of that, has the internal capacity to maintain this thing and to begin to build our data for trend analysis, because I think ultimately we all ought to be able to own our own data and kind of see what's going on our own. So I'm assuming that you'll help us end with that capacity at the end of the planning cycle, correct?
I believe so. I think the way the Wells Fargo program works is that when you first come on, you load data, and then after that you're in a transition page where you have access to all the data and actually your own ability to update on your own. Yep. So the goal is to teach you how to use it first and then how to update it afterwards.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, we got one more section to go, right?
This is it. Yeah, I'm just going to show you how to export maps, and that's it. There's other things you can do in here, but I'm not even going to try to go into that. But the export map is really, really simple. It's actually using the print icon in the very top here. And all this does is gives you a very simple dialog box that you can pan still within the window. You can zoom in if you want to make sure the map is exactly to the place that you're trying to work in. And then on the left-hand side here are some just customization options, allowing you to do things like make the text larger, change the shape of the map, be it portrait or landscape, the file types depending on how you want to use it. The PDF is a very basic printout, whereas the PNG, it's a digital file, so this allows you to crop it and scale it, and you can do a lot more customization with a digital file. You do have the ability to add your own text or add additional text into the description, and then we actually have people that just make a clean map, allowing them to use their own text outside of the map itself to describe the map that's being produced. But exporting it will save it locally onto your computer, so it doesn't save it what we call into this My Saved Work, which is in your account on PolicyMap. So at the very least, you'll have a copy of this map that you worked on. But if you want to save this map into your account, just like this concept of being able to come back to the work that you're doing today later on, use the Save option, which is the little icon up here. This will give you a chance to save this into your PolicyMap account, so that way you can come back a year from now, 5 years from now, access this map that you built, and then do any updates to it.
So that raises the question of how long will the consortium have, or steering committee, whichever the case may be, have access to PolicyMap? Into perpetuity, or is there a period, a cutoff period?
That I cannot answer. That is up to the Wells Fargo Foundation.
We need to ask that question. I think that's an important question, because we may want to come back 20 years from now and update.
Yeah.
The plan.
We hope so, right?
Yeah.
Look around the table. Yeah, you come back 20 years and you. I'll guarantee that for you. Go. Go.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I think that's a good session. I apologize for that really odd start for us there.
Thank you, Will.
Great. I'll send an email out, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.